Do you really know who you are? Let's unpack the pieces of you.
Broadcasting from the Subaru of Gwinnett Studio at the Gas South Convention Center in Duluth, Georgia, it's time to design your life on Status Life with Lita. Status Life with Lita is presented by Derek Hayes Law at 404-777-HURT and by 5 Strands Affordable Testing. Invest in your health at 5strands.com.
Well, here we are back in the studio for another wonderful episode of Status Life with Lita. It's great to be back in. I missed last show.
And I was not in the studio for the last show.
You're right. I forgot about that.
I had car trouble that morning, and both of my guests were patching in from Colorado. And so it seemed like an appropriate morning to not, I contemplated having to Uber all the way to the studio. I do prefer to tape in studio. But when you have car trouble, it just wasn't in the cards for me. You had already, you were in court that day.
I was in court.
Yeah.
Right.
So you weren't even available.
I don't think the judge would have looked kindly if I said, hey, I need to miss today because I've got a podcast to host.
I don't think your client
would have looked
kindly on that.
Both ways.
Welcome back to you, Derek.
Yeah, absolutely.
It always feels a little strange when you're not on the show with us, but I think we pulled off a fantastic show. With Chris and with Brian. And if you haven't listened to that one and you're tuning in today, I urge you to go back. We, as kidney donors, are on a huge mission to take the 100,000 people that are waiting for a kidney donation. We want to take that number all the way down to 0. And I should mention, it is 100,000 per year. So last year, they only performed 25,000 kidney transplants. And that many, so 75,000 roll over to the next year, and approximately 25,000 are added.
Right.
So that number really doesn't move. That needle doesn't move very much.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of people never actually get the donation. Unfortunately, there just aren't enough kidneys that have been donated, or cadavers, as we've talked about, to be able to donate those kidneys for those that need it. So, yes, if you have not listened to that show, it's wonderful. Go back, listen to it. I missed the show, but I did listen to the show.
Yeah,
so there's a lot to be gained from it, and I encourage you to do that.
Absolutely. So I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes before we dig into an absolutely fantastic show that we have planned today, one of my most favorites, and we have a special guest with us. But we talk a lot about 5 Strands, which is the sponsor of the show. Love them, love 5 Strands. We rave about their product. I would never put my name behind anything I did not 100% believe in. But there's something else I believe in very firmly, the other sponsor, which is Derek Hayes Law.
Yes,
that
absolutely.
That is you, the firm, your
Correct.
Mission, what you do
Correct.
as an attorney. The role that I now play in it, but I just wanted, you were in court last time and you're always on the show, but I don't think our listeners who have followed this journey for the last 5 seasons, just take a couple minutes, tell them what you do, tell them who you are, and tell them just the difference that you're making.
Yeah, I'm a personal injury attorney, which many times you're referred to as a trial attorney. I represent people who have been injured by the negligence of someone else, whether it's a car wreck, a slip and fall, a dog bite, any number of situations where someone else has caused an injury to you, where it's not a criminal issue, it's a civil issue. So you're looking for what's known as compensation. Compensation would be money to cover your medical expense, your pain and suffering, lost wages, those kinds of things. And I've done this now for right at 30 years, only representing the injured people. I've not worked for an insurance company. So therefore, the allegiance is always, as I say, for the right side, the correct side, those that have been hurt, going after the corporate giants. Billion-dollar companies that fight a battle over a few $1,000s in some situations, or several $100,000 in others, to avoid paying someone a fair amount for what's truly happened to them. And my job is to make sure that they're effectively and professionally represented in such a way to maximize that recovery all the way through. I love what I do. I say this as someone who enjoys the opportunity to help others. It's a perfect chance to take someone from a very bad situation and try and make things right as best you can. Money will never compensate the loss of a loved one, whether it's a child, a husband, wife, mom, or a dad that's killed in a car wreck. But unfortunately, the law can't bring them back, but the law can financially try and help heal that wound as best possible. And my objective is to do that in the best possible way.
Well, I can speak to that firsthand as your wife. I will say back in the beginning of our history when we were just dating, It was a lot for me to share you with your clients. And I think now, now that we're married, we've been together many, many years, I completely understand that is my role, because the amount of time that you pour into your clients, the amount of time that you pour into their cases, I have to share you with them, and I'm okay with that. I absolutely,
Yes.
I know your heart, and I know the way that you fight for them, and you fight against these insurance companies. They appreciate it. I get to be there on the final day of disbursement when the case is closed, and the hugs that you get and the testimonies that they give with you out of the room, so behind your back, and the way, I mean, we get tears, we get it all in gratitude. And that is the job and the way that you fight for them.
And that's
there's
the rewarding
so much
part.
appreciation. Right. There is.
The old adage is the easiest pain to bear is someone else's. And insurance companies, with someone sitting in a cubicle somewhere that can say, oh, that broken arm or that broken leg or those broken ribs, that can't hurt that bad. So therefore, we're not going to look at this as a claim that justifies an appropriate dollar amount. Well, again, my job is to fight that battle for them and make sure as best I can the insurance adjuster does understand what that pain really is like. And if not through them, then we go the route of a jury and let a jury make that decision for them.
And you're still there to fight with them.
Absolutely.
And you were in court last Monday,
Exactly.
with a
Which
client.
is the fun part.
So
I enjoy that.
you do. You enjoy the strategy of it. But anyway, thank you guys for listening. And I just felt like that was important to open and to just really give you some time, to explain. People may not know that.
Right.
You just hear a law firm and you don't really understand, the nitty gritty of what you're doing. So the plug would be if you've been injured, if a loved one's been injured, a friend, and you need representation. Derek handles cases primarily here in Georgia because that's where we're located and we're taping from. But you handle cases nationwide.
Correct.
So
an attorney can handle a case in any state up until the point it goes into litigation, which means filing suit. So if there's a case in Colorado or Alabama or Mississippi, wherever it may be, I can handle that case. If it does have to go into litigation, then I simply associate an attorney from that state to be involved in the litigation process with me. And I've done that many times.
Absolutely. All right, 404-777-HURT.
Correct.
Which is HURT is 4878. I need the numbers.
You've got that memorized even.
Yeah, because I don't like I don't like to find the letters on my phone.
And if not there, it's Derek Hayes Law, Derek, D-E-R-E-K, Hayes, H-A-Y-S, Law, DerekHayesLaw.com.
We got to get to the show.
Yes,
this
we
is
do.
The exciting part. All right. We are in studio again with my very dear friend. I want to call you a mentor. I just adore everything about you. April Farlow, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me here today.
Absolutely. We did another show with April. We were kind of reminiscing about it before we started taping today. We did a show on pivoting back in 2022. Today, you have written a book, and we are going to unpack. The book is called Pieces of You.
Yes, a little pivot for me.
It is a pivot for you. I know. And yeah, I mean, we can jump off from that point right there. I've got a series of questions, and we're going to go through some of the exercises, but what a book. I just want to give it some praise for a second before I let you kind of take the reins and go into this, and just to tell, I knew it would be good. Derek, I think you would agree.
Yes, absolutely.
Anything April puts her hand to, her name to, her thoughts to, her voice to, it's going to be good. We just know that about you.
At one point, the book was just released. Is it 2 weeks now?
Yes.
2 weeks ago, correct.
Yes. So this is hot off the press, literally.
And it's been exciting. I'll share my first excitement about it, but we made it 2 weeks and we're already on print number 2. So we
Really?
Oh, that's great.
It's
Wonderful.
Oh,
It's
wow.
been a good jump start.
Before we jump into the book itself, I want you to tell our listeners a little bit about your background. You wear many hats in life. And so go into everything that makes up April.
Sure. So I think one of the exercises in this book is about figuring out your values. And when you know what you value, then everything else makes sense. And I truly believe in empowering other people to be their best. And for me, that comes out in different ways. And one of them is being a speaker and a coach. And so I do that mostly in the corporate space. I empower, hopefully, my family and my children. And so I knew that was true when my daughter was on the playground. As each child would come down the slide, she would go, "Good job, good job." And I was like, I've overdone it. And then I work with youth aging out of foster care. And my hope is to empower them as they seek independence. And so all of these things are done separately, but I would say they all got started in speaking and in coaching. So I met my husband as a student in my class, which is a whole nother story.
I didn't know
Yes.
that.
I didn't realize that either.
One of my
On a
daughters.
side note, hey, Kip, I hope you're listening. I'm sure you are.
One of my daughters came from a class that I was working in. I have started Lydia's Place as a result of that. And so speaking and coaching has been a part of it. The book adds in faith, and that was a new piece for me to get to share that as well.
All right, you just skated by Lydia's Place. I want to go deep about Lydia's Place because it's one of my favorites. I'll let you tell what the mission is because I think anyone who's not aware of the need will be inspired by what you do.
Sure. So Lydia's Place exists to serve young adults who've experienced foster care or housing insecurity. And we primarily focus on students who are age 17 to 24. And we offer housing and supplies, but also we provide basic life skills. If you think about someone who's aged out, they may not know how to drive or how to rent an apartment or to get insurance. And so we help with teaching those skills while someone is in our care.
Which is amazing because it's a need. I'm sure I thought about it, but never really realized how tremendous that need is. Just imagine being someone who has been in foster care your entire life and you've aged out of the system. And my understanding from you is that basically when you reach that age, it's, I'm sorry, we can't.
Yeah, on your 18th birthday, correct? That is what aging out means.
Well, and that looks different for different kids.
Okay.
The challenge is many of them have had such challenges throughout their teenage years that they reach 18 and I'm checking myself out because I want to be independent, which lots of 18-year-olds want to be independent.
Right, they think that.
The reality is they don't realize that they're not also prepared to adult.
Sure.
And so they hit a hiccup and they run into a homeless situation, and that's where we were able to step in.
Which is phenomenal.
Yeah. And but like you, Derek, I would have never known that was a huge need had I not been giving a speaking opportunity with 400 kids in Georgia aging out in a day. They were all gathered together. They were all they were all completing their time in care, and it was there that I looked in their faces and knew something had to change.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm like you, though. I didn't realize the need.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't realize. It's, I can say I lived in some kind of bubble that I just didn't know. I mean, you just think, you hear about foster care, you hear about the adoption system, everybody wants to help, we support lots of nonprofits, but we never went a step further to realize what happens when they're young adults.
We are going to talk about the book, I promise. But one of the things I want to talk about real quick is the Lydia's Place Gala, which we went to a few weeks ago. And you had some of the former students that had gone through the program that came back, 2 of them. And both of them were phenomenal success stories. In fact, one, I believe, graduated with a 4.0 from UGA, which was incredible. To have been someone to not have a household, a family, a mom and a dad to support them all the way through.
That student is graduating in May and is doing amazing with a job waiting on him.
Yeah.
And the student that came back that I think you're referring to
from Colorado, if I recall.
Yeah, he got a perfect score on the ACT.
That's right.
And he was encouraged to go to a community college that he would never have a chance to succeed and not succeed, but he would never have a chance to go to the colleges that he was dreaming of
Because of his background.
Yes, and he's now living in Colorado doing the job that he always wanted to do and owns his own home. And my favorite statement that he said, my entire life I was bouncing from house to house, and he said, I will never be homeless again.
Yeah, I remember
I
him saying
own my
that.
home. And
I mean, their
that's
testimonies
significant.
are that night.
Yeah.
We sit in that room and, we get dressed up and we have a date night and we eat the food. But when they take the stage and their videos and their stories, we are there for that reason. But I mean, kudos to you. This was your dream. This was your vision. You made it all happen. What Lydia's Place is, the physical building, from the store that they have the availability and access to go down there, the clothing, the housing, the furniture. I mean, all of it. It is just an incredible nonprofit.
It has been so many people locking arms with me to make it happen.
Yes,
It's been amazing.
And the staff, the board of directors, I know most of them. I mean,
And you have
just
volunteered a lot.
brought
so
the
thank
right
you.
people.
been amazing.
Yeah, God brought those people.
Well-
That's just.
100%.
I mean, you facilitated, but He put that on your heart.
And as much as you've blessed those students, they blessed you tenfold more.
Yes.
Oh, it's amazing. In fact, as we look at the book in just a moment, that it is one of the students, one of the ones who came back and was on stage, was in the group of women who helped me write the book. So it has crossed over every part of my life.
Sure.
Yeah. And it has. And I'm on this journey and I love it. I'm just here. Like I said, I want to be a part of it. All right, let's dig into the book.
Sure.
Pieces of You. So we got to start with, right, if I'm interviewing the author, tell us, the vision for the book. Where was this born, right? We talked about Lydia's Place and where that came out of. Where did this come from?
Sure. So I've done corporate training for 20 years and going from company to company. And it's very fun because I get to see lots of different industries and work with lots of different teams. And in training executives on communication and leadership, one of the things that I feel we often miss is we talk about who you are. We talk about how to communicate your values and how do you communicate what you stand for? How do you demonstrate your leadership? But we don't ever get to talk about whose you are. And when you miss that piece, I feel like a lot of leadership, for someone especially who has faith as a big part of who they are, if we don't get to bring that into the equation, it's a miss. And so the book was really written to allow people to explore that you can bring your faith to work with you. And if you don't work, for women who are raising children or not working yet, anywhere in there you can, when you know who you are and you know whose you are a better leader.
One of the really incredible aspects that you took with this book, and I'm going to go back to what you just said about Lydia's Place and all the people that helped you make that possible. There was a lot of people that helped make this possible. This is written by April Farlow, but your kaleidoscope of friends.
It's a collection, yes.
I mean, that's a really, really neat angle. And just the way you pulled a kaleidoscope in, I'm going to let you talk about that and who they are to you.
Yeah. So in the book, I define a kaleidoscope as someone who speaks truth, shares perspective, and always votes with their feet. And that's a phrase from my dad.
I was going to say, I've heard that phrase.
Yes, that you vote with your feet by showing up. And in the in preparing to write this book, I had 30 women come together, and I intentionally did not pick just my best friends. I picked 30 people from all women, but from all different aspects of my life. So there was a Lydia's Place student. There was my mom, one of my mom's best friends. There was other moms like myself, people from the corporate world. So I really tried to get different ages and stages. And we came together, and I taught the corporate piece that I'm used to teaching in classes, or that I'm speaking about in companies. And then I added in whose you are. How does this line up with your Heavenly Father?
Okay. Am I a kaleidoscope friend?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I was reading it like, when did this meeting happen? 'Cause
Yes.
I really want to be
This
there.
was before
I
you came
figured
to
it was.
town.
I hoped it was. Because I know I had the honor of being in the room the day the book launched.
Yes.
We had the Rise and Soar conference. I was a speaker at it last year. I've probably talked about that on the show. I've been in a mastermind. We have a mutual friend who runs that, Miss
Amy
Amy
Whipple,
Whip.
who
She's
was
been
on
on
the
the show. This is a wonderful just network of powerhouse women that, we're doing this,
Well, you just
this
shared
life together.
You just shared a perfect example.
What's
because
that?
on launch day, I said, if you were a part of this book, please stand up. And you were one of the ones that was standing up, because it has been a journey of people pushing me forward. And the only hope and prayer that I have is that I can do the same for my friends when it's their turn.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, you've helped me. Remember, I had a 360 person people in the room. I was going to speak.
Yes.
And just getting my feet wet again. And I called you and I was like, give me the 5 minute, but it went beautifully, that you were in you
just
snuck
to be
in
clear,
the
she
audience.
asked me first and I said, well, and I gave her some pointers. She goes, never mind, I'll call April.
I like to be that friend you call.
I'm like, okay.
Yes.
I tried.
Yes.
But
No, that was a really beautiful day, and that was launch day, and we all got to be in the room and be a part of that. But anyway, I was going to put you on the spot there and
Yes.
say, I want to be a kaleidoscope.
Absolutely.
All right, but this was interesting. I'm got my book open here to chapter 1.
Mm-hmm.
And chapter 1 is, I'm going to say it exactly correct. There's the introduction. Oh, the compared piece.
Mm-hmm.
The compared piece. Chapter 1. Why do you lead with that? I know why, because I've read chapter 1.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we lead with comparison trap first?
Comparison is so important because I think we're all comparing. And one of my dear friends, Dr. Natasha Ganem, talks from a sociology perspective about how we're constantly measuring. It's not how do I think I look, it's how do they think I look, and then I measure how that feels. And so in comparison, from an early age, I really believe it starts around 8, we start seeing kids for the first time look around like what they have on different genes than I do. What does that look like? And it carries forward into adulthood. And we have all these different measuring sticks that we measure by. For teenagers, it's often, did they get more likes or do they have more friends than I do?
Nowadays, especially with social media.
And
correct.
when we were younger, we counted our friends by like a paper. Now there's an actual number that shows how many friends you have on this, app. But as an adult, I feel like we're constantly measuring ourselves up. Am I a good mom against someone else who's just parenting differently? Am I working well? Am I successful? Do I make more money than you do? Does my house look different than yours? Is it always clean? Do I have dinner on the table every night?
Body image.
Oh my gosh.
Are we the same size?
Yeah.
How do her pants fit?
And
something trivial.
And I'll tell you, this is a chapter I might have thought we could skip over.
Really?
Until I invited the 30 women. And in the group, I asked a question first thing. I said, oh, I'm sorry. Am I good?
No,
I said,
this is good.
I said, when you close your eyes and you get really quiet, if you were to describe yourself, what would you say?
That was astonishing. And I'm glad you said that because I read that twice. I could not believe how negative their responses were. Truly. And I wanted to ask you privately here with all of our listeners.
Privately. Wait, let me do the math on that. Privately.
Was this the only responses or did some of them have some positive words?
So I did not share this in the book, but here's a really cool thing. Of the 30 women in the room, all the boards were primarily negative with the exception of one. And the one exception was my one Lydia's Place student who was in the room.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if it's because she had overcome such incredible odds that she saw herself in a positive light. That's a whole nother discussion.
Yes.
Where when we take away the opportunity for someone to struggle, we take away their sense of confidence in that. But she went positive.
All right.
The other women went negative.
She valued different things, clearly.
That's a good way to put it.
She did. She clearly valued different things than
It was
others.
a remarkable, just to see it so clearly. By the way, this exercise was with huge Post-it notes on the wall. So their list was very visible for everyone else to see.
Sure.
So you could walk around and you could just feel it in the room.
So I'm going to ask the question. So whatever you're doing as a listener, if you're driving, if you're exercising, which is primarily what we do, or cleaning, and you're listening to this podcast, just think for a minute about this question and how you would answer it. When you get quiet and hear your internal voice, what does it say? How would you describe yourself based on that voice? Take a minute.
Wow. That's a tough question.
That's a big question, and I love it. So some of the adjectives that April's Kaleidoscope friends, this is in the book. This is what I was sort of gasping over, and I had to read twice. High-strung, unorganized, complicated, prissy, a rule follower, and they thought that was a negative. I mean, that could go either way. Clingy, critical, lazy, constantly inconsistent, a church mouse, lack of self-control, wounded, insignificant, angry, alone, a bad mom, divorced, intimidating, infertile. That's a hard one. Workaholic, unappreciated.
So I'm going to add in, as you name this list of words, I did not invite like average people to be in this group. I invited my rock star friends, like people who were doing incredible in life. So it just showed me that we're internally speaking to ourselves very differently than the world is seeing us.
That's hard. I mean, I bet that was incredible data for you to get, and I see why you led with it.
I'll give you 2 examples of where just my heart sank when I saw the boards. But one, I have a daughter who joined our family from Nigeria. She is the light in any room.
Yes, she is.
Like she just has this personality that is magnetic.
Yeah.
And when I read her paper on the wall, it said, "Not good enough to make a friend."
Maria?
Who has friends.
I was going to say.
Everyone wants to be with me.
Yes.
But in her mind, she was 26 when she
You
wrote
gravitate to her and her smile and her
100%.
energy. And
But she was thinking there weren't other people her age at her college who look like her, their background is like her, and so she felt like it was a reflection of her, and it's not.
No.
But that's just an example of how I'm looking at someone going, how do you? I'm partial to her, obviously, but
Sure.
how is that even a thing? But it's our internal voice; it speaks differently.
Wow. So it went a little deeper with your exercise, because that was you said it doesn't begin to scratch the surface. I think those were very eye-opening and scratched a little bit, because then it went into the two phrases, right? I won't read them all, but it says too uptight, too sensitive, too needy, too emotional, too small, too much debt. They're just pulling in every aspect of their life. It's in a negative way. There's very little positive in this list. And then they went into some not statements. Not successful, not educated, not in a relationship. These are all comparison trap.
And you didn't ask them to give negative responses. That was the response they gave.
This is the
you
direction
left it wide
went.
open, positive, negative.
I just said,
anything.
what do you think?
Right.
Yeah.
And just astounding to me that this is what we came up with.
Well, you unpack this in a big, big way, and we're going to dig a little deeper into where this went, and how basically the end of chapter 1 was formed, with it beginning with collecting all this data and really realizing how all of these women were valuing themselves. We have to take a quick break. We got to talk about our sponsors, honor them. They are what keeps this show alive. Derek, take it away.
Yes, it is 5 strands affordable testing. You mentioned them at the top of the broadcast. We use the product. We actually have. The products are amazing. It's simply 5 strands of your hair. You send it in, and they give you a test regarding your food insensitivities, not allergies, but insensitivities. And a reminder that Status Life with Lita is sponsored by 5 Strands Affordable Testing. Gain personalized insights on how your body interacts with your diet and lifestyle patterns. All they need is 5 strands of your hair, and you'll receive personalized results to help you reach your health and wellness goals. Visit 5strands.com to learn more. Hello, everyone. As a listener of the Status Life with Lita podcast, you already know I'm attorney Derek Hayes. I've been practicing law in the state of Georgia now for over 26 years. My firm specializes in cases involving personal injury, catastrophic injury, nursing home abuse, and any other situation where someone was injured by the negligence of others. As I've said before, if insurance companies ever resolve claims the way they should, I'd be out of a job. But I'm not worried about that happening. Did you know insurance adjusters are trained to pay you as little as possible to protect their company's bottom line? They say they're genuinely concerned about you, but really the goal is to settle the claim with you for far less money than you deserve. My job is to make sure they pay the full value of your claim and nothing less. You can speak directly with me by calling my office at 404-777-HURT. Visit my website at derekmhayes.com, or check out my social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And be sure to catch my podcast, Injury Insider with Derek Hayes, wherever you enjoy your favorite podcast. I look forward to speaking with you.
Tired of experiencing bloating, eczema, diarrhea, or weight problems? Get to the root cause of your dietary discomforts with 5 Strands Affordable Testing. No need to schedule time off work. Just collect and send in 5 strands of your hair to see how intolerant your body is responding to over 600 common food items. Intolerance reactions are not life-threatening like allergies, but are responsible for most daily discomforts. Achieve your dietary and lifestyle goals by visiting 5strands.com and ordering your at-home collection kit today.
Welcome back. We were talking about comparisons as we went to break there. And I want to pick up with a paragraph directly from the book that I want to read, and then we'll discuss this part as well. Comparison breeds rotten fruit. That's a great statement right there. It shapes your identity in a way that only tells us the bad, the negative, the failure. It kills your joy and your confidence. And truth be told, once these beliefs about who you are have taken root, they're hard to remove. Flipping your internal script isn't a quick and easy task.
That's incredible.
That's very profound.
Yeah, absolutely it is. I want to mention my book is completely full of notes. It is full of highlighted.
I was so
there's
honored.
Post-it
covered in
notes.
Post-it notes.
When I walked in and saw all the Post-it
Yes.
notes around the book, it made my heart happy.
So one of my Post-it notes says, need to make a workbook. So my entrepreneurial side wants to tell April, you could make a supplemental workbook. Like there's so much to unpack. I read through it. relatively quickly because it's that good, right? I just couldn't get enough. And before I did the previous show with Brian Teal and Chris Sullivan about my kidney donor athletes, we touched on that at the top of the show. My previous show was about some of the struggles that I'm having in parenting and just 2 teenagers and just parenting struggles. My 13-year-old daughter is struggling with comparison traps specific to touching on, adolescent depression, some anxiety issues. I mean, I'm just pouring into her right now with everything I have. And I couldn't get past this first chapter without realizing she needs to read this. And so I am on reading this for the second time out loud to her. So kudos to you, because I've found so much purpose in this that we're going to heal my daughter, and with this book at the forefront. But that chapter you just read, I mean, I had to highlight it for her, which is why I think it's so important. I'm going to continue it on just a little bit. Again, this is so relevant. And this brings in the faith component, which is the heart of this book, right? We're talking about comparison trap, but the healing part starts at the top. It starts with whose we are and realizing that. But if you want to be confidently established in who you are, it's a task you must be willing to take on, because every piece of life you'll find opportunities to compare, to measure up, to question your worth. I want to highlight that. Every piece of life you can compare. If you want to stand confidently in who you are, you must turn down the volume on comparison and turn up the volume on something more valuable. The truth of who God is and who he made you to be. That's it right there.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
it. If I could instill that in every young adult moving into their teenage years, so we weren't all women, friends, kaleidoscope women, men, anybody, you would learn these lessons at such an early age. We wouldn't be struggling.
I in order to write this book, I sat down with a mentor and I said, I need to learn to study the Bible, because if we're going to write about faith, I don't want to Google it. I want to study it myself. And Suzanne Chambers has been such a light in my life. She shared with me something repeatedly that I think is important in this piece. And she said that she taught her children always, you are unique, but you aren't special. And she would say, so much in our culture right now, we want to teach everyone, you're special, you're special. And she said, that implies that you are, that God loves one person more than another. And she said, that is just not true, but you are unique. And I think this chapter is really calling someone to realize what makes you unique and do that. Because when we're comparing, we're really measuring up to what God called someone else to be. And when we can get focused on who we are, then that's where we shine.
The best version of ourselves.
Absolutely.
Not the best version of somebody else.
No, not at all.
So you took your 30 kaleidoscope friends and you're realizing everyone is describing themselves with this really negative tone. So then it takes a little turn, because you asked them what? What was the next step for you in this portion, doing this research?
And let me say, this was all, I had 2 different groups doing this at the same time. So I had a group in the morning and a group in the evening, and I intentionally taught it differently to both groups because I wanted to see, could I get a different reaction? I got the same reaction in this. But I asked a question I wasn't even planning to ask. I just didn't know what to do with these negative words. And so I said, now would you describe your 5 best friends? And the words looked very different.
They look so different. So when you look outward and you look at someone else, here's where it changes. Beautiful, loyal, strong, a good friend, determined, big heart, positive, intelligent, giving, devoted, fun, confident, encouraging, purposeful. I mean, all these words.
Not a single negative word in that.
That they're looking outward at the people that they love.
And, we often talk about women being catty or like not wanting the best in other people. It showed me we're actually harder on ourselves.
Yeah.
And, but to see this, and when I saw these words, I was like, oh, now we're describing the women I see in this room. This is accurate.
Yeah. It's amazing. You've got one sentence here, and I highlighted it. You past this exercise, it says, remember, there's always more to the story. And that's the comparison trap, right? That's it. You don't know what's behind the scenes. You don't know how someone's feeling. It's just like Maria. We all, oh my gosh, Maria, she's this beautiful light, and yet she thinks she can't be a good friend. That's one teeny tiny example. The statement you make here, be careful to remember that salt and sugar look the same. I've never heard it put like that. Wow.
But they do.
Yeah.
And I think, I think about it on social media and the pictures that we see and we measure up.
Yes.
I have a picture that was, looked like the cutest picture of Lydia when she was younger. She was a baby, not even one yet, and I had put her in a pile of leaves, raked all the leaves together, and made it look like she was throwing the leaves, and it was an adorable picture. And she's smiling. It looks as though she's smiling in the picture. What really happened as I was taking that picture is that she sat in an ant pile.
Oh, my.
She got so many ants on her hand that I had to rush her to the doctor.
Oh, wow.
So many bites. And it looks like she's smiling in the picture. She's actually starting to cry because she's in so much pain.
Wow.
And I think that's really important for us to remember as we look at perfectly curated photos, that that's not real life.
Right.
No.
And we only see snapshots, and most people aren't sharing the comparison that's behind the scenes.
Your phones allow you to retouch any photo you choose to make
Or
it
just-
look far better than it
Or
was.
share the selection
Yeah.
that makes it look appealing.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of every chapter, and we're unpacking the comparison trap here in chapter 1, you have action steps. And I think that's really brilliant as far as how can you teach this without making this thought-provoking, without giving them an actual step to start working on this, right? You can't just talk about it. You have to make these thought-provoking questions, and then the final closing of each chapter is a prayer and a truth to remember. So I want to go through the who you are. I want to read these like I did the exercise where I asked everyone who's listening, take a minute and really really listen and think about what your answer would be. So this is the end of chapter 1, the comparison trap, who you are. So these are questions. Think about the answer for yourself. When you get quiet and hear your inner voice, how would you describe yourself? Do you tend to go to a positive or a negative? Are there words that hurt? And this is why I think you need a workbook.
Thank you. I would love to have a workbook.
Just saying, go with it. On the third round of this. Okay. Next, bullet point. How would your close friends describe you? How is that different from how you might describe yourself? I want to interject a little story here. So I am in a women's Bible study. It is my Tuesday morning. It is a non-negotiable for me. I always, try to not schedule meetings. That is my day. That is my day in community. That is my day to study. That is my day, to be with God and to learn more about His Word. And it was the first season I was in it a few years ago. And we were doing one of these exercises out loud. Tell us not about yourself, not I'm a mom of 2 and I'm engaged or married, not that, but tell me about you. Tell me your words. And as much as I'm on this podcast, I do value work. I, like you, do some public speaking. And not I do some, you do a lot. But I froze in that moment. I couldn't think of what to tell these women about me, and yet my whole platform is about me, right? This is what I'm called to do. And my very best friend was in that room, and I looked at her and I said, will you answer this? I wanted her to tell the room about me. I froze in that moment. And I loved what she said because it's all positive, right? But I know these things about myself, and yet when I was put on the spot, I couldn't do it. So it was it's interesting, right?
It really is.
Yes. So I can do it when I've written a speech about it, but I couldn't do it off the fly. Anyway, it's hard to do. I'm validating what your 30 Kaleidoscope friends, it's hard to do.
Well, I think part of that, and in another chapter in the book, I talk about rules and beliefs. And so often we believe what's acceptable in our culture. And we're supposed to be humble and confident, and that's a little bit confusing. So if you want me to tell me about myself, what do I share? Simon Sinek is one of my heroes, and one of the things I heard him say recently was he was talking about there's a level of friendship, and you just described your friend, how she talked about you. There are the friends you call when you're in trouble. But there's another level that's a higher level of friendship, and that's who do you call when things are good? Who do you call to brag on when you just had a big win? That's a friend who's truly excited and happy for you. And when we can see ourselves and have that circle of friends, that's powerful. But we can't get there unless we get out of comparing ourselves to our friends and get on to celebrating our uniqueness.
I love that. And I think you should write another book after you do the workbook on.
You got me lined up.
You need to do a book for teens.
That's certainly of interest to me.
Yes, that. And then women, how do we make those kind of friends as women? I know I've just been doing some research. I'm a student. I'm a student of everything. I call me a seeker, call me a student. I'm always trying to learn more, listening to the right podcasts and all the things. But one thing that's come in my attention lately is women having trouble making friends with women because we go through these different phases of our life. I'm not trying to get off topic here. Just stay with me. That it's okay if our kids are in school or preschool or our mom's club, we're at sports, we're able to find a community of women in there. We make friends with women when we're in college. We make friends with women when we're children. But how do you make friends, those friends that you were just describing, how do you make those friends as adults in different phases of our life when our children are not with us anymore? Have we brought those friends with us because we have that amazing tribe of women? Or if we're lonely, the word lonely came up, even in your friends, a lot. How do we find that deep, deep connection? Because a lot of us are searching for it.
It is so true. And when you talk about introducing yourself in a group of women, one of the things that I think is interesting about women, and by the way, when I do corporate training, it's usually a mixed audience. Most often it's more men than women. And years ago, I was asked to teach a women's academy, and I was like, I don't do groups of women, right? Because of what we're talking about, it can feel very catty. I learned the deep craving that women have, and when I did teach that class, to find their people and to feel supported in a community. When I was teaching this group of 30 women, no one wanted to leave.
Wow. Because
we want real, vulnerable, honest conversation, and we want to push each other forward. But as women, so often we're standing in the stands. We're clapping at our child's football or dance recital or whatever. We're cheering on our spouse. We're looking at our coworkers and pushing them forward. It's very important to find what we are good at, and it's okay to step into that.
Yeah. And once you find that, it's very refreshing, right? When you can get someone to stop comparing, tear down their walls, all the things, just get in there. I always call it getting in there with a fork. I like to get in there with a fork with you.
Yes, you do.
Derek's a little more closed off. We know that. He's been on the podcast for 5 seasons.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I also think that's kind of a guy thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it is.
And I think, to be fair, women crave the depth of friendship, but it's how do you go get it?
Yeah.
And real conversation is hard to find at times.
I'll be your next one. I'm going to line you up, April. I'm going to continue with the bullet points and finish up on this. What is your most challenging comparison trap? That's a good question. What triggers you the most? I'll answer it, and I'll be perfectly vulnerable. Mine is FOMO, fear of missing out. I get really upset, and I'm really try to put myself in check. So I'll just say that vulnerable. If there is an event, I got FOMO because I'm not in your Kaleidoscope group, and I didn't know you.
Yes, it's real.
That is my little trigger point, right? Just wanting to be included, but yet I'm also strong and confident and have my own friend groups. But at the same time, even if it's far removed from me, you still see it. And it still triggers just a little bit. I'm just being vulnerable.
And we all
it.
have that comparison. I think an example of that for women, I think often it's like, are you wearing the latest fashion? Are you wearing it? And I did not even know this until I was in my late 30s. Like, I'm never in fashion. I don't know how to dress. But one of the things I learned is I don't have any identity there. So it doesn't hurt my feelings when I'm not looking like, have the best outfit in the room. But when there is a conversation and someone has had a hard time and I don't get invited into that, I feel very much like I've missed out. And so for me, we all have the thing that triggers.
Yeah.
I'm very confident in my behavior. Like I feel, if you want to put me on a stage, I feel very comfortable there. But if you're going to question my intentions and you're going to compare me to someone else, I throw my arms up. So everyone has the wall that they get backed into that we have to learn what that is, but it makes us vulnerable to comparison in that moment.
Absolutely. What do you struggle to love about yourself? What can you do to love that part of yourself? These are so thought-provoking. I just love it. All right. So then the next sort of big, bold headline you go through, that was who you are, right? That's figuring out who you are as a person. Now you go through the bullet points to ask yourself whose you are. Derek, I'm going to let you take these questions so I can focus my brain and answer for myself.
Well, it is a natural progression from who you are to whose you are. I'll say that. And why is it important to consider how you see yourself? Is it to make you feel better about yourself, or is it to take your eyes off yourself and put them on the truth of God instead? Very thought-provoking there. What stands out to you about who God says you are? Yeah, that's a tough one to think about and got to process. And can you believe this is true for you?
Wow. Those are big.
Yeah, that can be a struggle. And then finally, what makes believing who God says you are difficult?
Yeah. I mean, you got to think about it.
No, I do agree with you about the workbook. That's
Yeah.
So I think one thing that's so important about these questions is where they came from. And so this book was largely written by the influence of my father. So every day when I was going to high school, my dad, when I would get out of the car, would say the exact same thing. And he drove me to school every morning, and he would say, remember who you are, and remember I love you. And so when I was a year into writing this book, and it took several years, but when I was 1 year into writing this book, my dad passed away. And all of a sudden, I'm writing a book largely influenced by him, and I lost my compass of like who I often would go to. And it finally made me realize that who I am, he had so influenced by those conversations. You know, I wanted to listen to the radio. He wants to have these deep conversations early in the morning. But who I am, he had really helped me map a lot of that out. But whose was I when he was gone? And it's the first time I really had to lean into my Heavenly Father in a way that was all new and push my faith in a completely different way where I was hurting so much. So remember who you are is all about your identity. And whose you are is so often by your family lineage, but really whose you are is I'm a daughter of the King. And when I can do that, when I can remember that, well, then comparison becomes pretty light.
You get very real in this book. There's a lot of personal stories, but how that all ties together. Was this book therapeutic for you in writing it and grieving for your father?
I took a year off from writing the book as I grieved. It was too raw. And then when I came back, it was a lot to unpack. But I'll tell you what's been interesting. As a speaker and coach, I so often will have someone, especially if I'm coaching them, I probably did this when you and I were working together, someone who's about to give a speech, I will say, tell me your story. And then I will listen and take notes, and then I will retell the story myself. And so often I am telling someone their story and they're crying. And I'll say, why am I crying? And I'll say, because you're hearing it from a different perspective. Well, as a writer, I hired a coach to help me. Sarah Shelton was amazing in coaching me. But it was like I got a life edit because I would send her, these are the 3 stories I'm thinking of and should scrap 2 and keep 1. And I'm like, oh, maybe these don't matter. But they do. She was just helping to stay focused.
Right.
And yet it helped me realize that all those things that happen in my life are shaping who I am.
Absolutely. We did what I'll call a deep dive into chapter 1.
Yes.
I want you to leave us not hanging, but with all the other chapters, really do an overview explanation. Where does this book go? You know, right? Explain. I thought maybe I would read the chapter headings, but I don't think that's going to be as important as you explaining why we need it, what's in here, what they're going to learn, right? Finish the book in just a few sentences.
Sure. So the whole book is based on figuring out the pieces that make up who and whose you are. And so the distorted piece is really about your relationship with your earthly father and how that impacts your relationship with your heavenly father. And then I move into the piece that's shattered because we've all had pain. And so how does that factor into becoming who we are? The connected piece is all about our relationships, our beliefs come in, our rules, and then I look at values. I look at purpose because we're all trying to figure out, why am I here? What am I doing? And then what is my vision moving forward? And what I really believe, the book is all, I call the women my kaleidoscopes. And this all came from my mom's collection of kaleidoscopes.
Which is fascinating that ties in.
Yeah.
And she has a collection of kaleidoscopes.
And
And I know your mom. I know this is all absolutely in there.
Yes. And so I realized that we have all these pieces that can feel random. Oh, that pain I experienced, and oh, that relationship. And when we put the pieces together and we aim those pieces toward the light as a kaleidoscope, you really see the most beautiful reflection when you aim the kaleidoscope to the light. Then God can make all of those pieces come together in a pattern that is beautiful. So what was random and broken and shattered, it isn't when we see that it's all making up who we are. So the goal of this book is really to say you are not random. You are here intentionally and on purpose, and when you authentically live out who you are, you will be your best self. And when we are our best self, we best reflect our Heavenly Father for the rest of the world to see.
I hope I said this correctly. I read this book quickly because I couldn't put it down, because you absolutely will get all of that out of this book. Tell everybody, where do they buy it?
Sure. So the book is available on Amazon. It's Pieces of You by April Farlow. And should you read it and love it, I would love to hear from you, hear a review, or have any feedback. You've given me great insights on where I could go forward from here. But the other thing that I would say is I've spoken for companies for so long. My hope is that this will open up an opportunity for me to speak in churches and in faith-based organizations to share how you can bring this all together.
I am certain that
Yeah,
will happen.
exactly.
Yeah, that's where it's going.
In fact, I think you are in January, right?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
happening.
yes. Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
right here. Yeah, the
Yes.
Kaleidoscope Collective with Krista Rooks. I just love how God just weaves all this together at the Rise and Soar Conference, which was the
Yes.
day of the book launch. I just happened to be sitting at the table with Krista, but recognized her because you invited me to the night of Hope Heals in downtown Athens with Catherine Wolfe.
Oh my
and
gosh.
Krista was singing. That's the first time I've heard her sing. That's the first time I've laid eyes on her. Now she's across from me at a women's mastermind event. You closed the show that day with the day of the book launch. We walk into church Sunday, and she was attending our church for the first time, checking it out with her whole family. So Derek and I, he met the husband, we met all her kids. It was just this wonderful weaving of everything. And I'm sitting here in this podcast today, and this just fell out of my book.
So it's outstanding.
So yeah, it's all being put together. So this is January 31st. This is in, I was going to say Bogart, Watkinsville, out towards Athens, which
Yes.
is where we live. You and Krista are going to have a night of worship. And are you going to dig into the book
Yes.
that night? Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
So we will have
Wonderful.
quite a bit of reflection. But yeah, any opportunity I have to share this book and this message, I invite it and want to get in front of people because I really believe that when we can put our pieces on purpose, that's where the impact's going to happen.
Well, I believe in it. I believe in you. I texted you this morning. I need 6 more books.
Thank you so much.
Everybody's getting them for Christmas. I know the women in my life will cherish it, and they just will. They're going to get as much out of it. My friends, like attracts like in that way, and we all sort of feel the same way in life and are doing life together. So if I have loved it that much, I'm going to give it to all my girls for Christmas. So
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here today.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
And I think you know this. You're an inspiration to many, many of us.
Well, thank you guys very much
Beyond
for
just the book
pushing me
itself.
forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Lita, before we go to the closing, you want to talk about you and how people can find you.
You can find me. I'm not going to talk about me. Status Life with Lita is the name of the podcast. I've got a whole new mission for the blog that's going to come out in January. I'm going a different route. I'll launch that on the next show. Wait, when's the next show? In January. That's
January,
right. We're going to end today on Pieces of You. So if you have any questions for an upcoming podcast, notes for an upcoming podcast, just email me, statuslifewithlita@gmail.com, or you can get into my DMs on Instagram, statuslifewithlita. Everything is there. It's the name of the show. It's the name of the blog. That is my handle.
Absolutely. Don't forget about 5 Strands Affordable Testing. Thank you again very much for joining us on Status Life with Lita, presented by Business RadioX, Derek Hayes Law, and 5 Strands Affordable Testing. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and Lita's Instagram, Status Life with Lita, so you don't miss any upcoming shows. This program and all the other shows are available in your favorite podcast apps. Until next time, for Lita Brooks Hayes, I'm Derek Hayes, and you are listening to Status Life with Lita on Business Radio X.